Hello, it's Brad Laurie, your Blockchain Brad. Today we're talking about all things Elrond. We have an exclusive update for you. And to do this, we have the CEO in the seat today. His name is Benjamin Minku. Benjamin, thank you very much for representing Elrond today.
Thanks. Glad to be here, Brad.
Likewise, mate. Now, it's been some time since we last spoke, and when we did, you provided with key information about when you were starting, but you've done a lot since then. So the objective tonight is really to explore all the things you've been doing in that interim period and what you plan to do beyond this point. But let's pull it back to the fundamentals for a moment for those who may not know about Elrond. Now, you stand for the Internet of Value. You're all about unique kinds of sharding. So let's explore fundamentally what you're about. When people say Elrond, what does it mean?
I think there is a very important insight that we had very early on, namely that blockchain was going to be very important for the future of technology and economy, especially because blockchain essentially provides a way of transferring value or making any kind of transfer without the need for a trusted third party. What has happened was that basically Bitcoin came along and it proved this model, and then Ethereum came along and it added smart contracts to this. And what happened following that was that Ethereum basically took off a lot faster than people anticipated. And with this came some interesting problems. And one of the most pressing problems that we discovered and noticed was scalability and then efficiency. Mm-hmm. So this is exactly where Elrond comes in. And Elrond is a solution trying to address this problem through which we bring a 1,000-fold improvement in performance, especially addressing throughput and speed of execution.
Okay. So obviously, Ben, in this case, you're looking at trying to solve the trilemma by looking at decentralization, security, and scalability in a new way, looking at innovative technologies. And mainly, having looked at your charts and the way you've analyzed pre-existing blockchains, you want to move beyond just the blockchain itself. But can you clarify for the viewers, are you indeed an actual blockchain?
Yes, so we are building a new blockchain from scratch that is trying to address things in a new way. What we understood was that basically, if you look over a short time horizon, there are many options that might seem interesting, but they are essentially noise. They are not addressing the real problem. But if you look over a longer time horizon, there are only a very limited number of solutions. And this is especially true of sharding and state sharding with proof of stake. There are many layer 2 solutions to some problems, but all these solutions fade away if you look long enough into the future, because once you have the first solution that addresses layer 1 and brings a 1,000-fold improvement, you basically don't need any other solution. Why would you use something different, right? So what we understood was that you need to think from first principles and just address one single problem, namely, how do you build a new system knowing everything you have? And then this system should be able to scale globally. If you can do that and build things from scratch, then this is the solution that will prevail over the long run.
Okay, so you are building blockchain from scratch. You're trying to be arguably one of the most performant blockchain systems and architectures in existence now. So we need to explore if you are indeed that and if you can prove it and let people know how you're going to do this. So let's pull it back to some of the statements you've made. One of them says that you are user-friendly. You're a user-friendly blockchain for deploying programmable money. And you have unstoppable apps, as you say, to onboard onto them. So let's explore what you are currently in this time and place. Firstly, programmable money. What does that mean in the context of blockchain? And do you have any apps that are indeed unstoppable yet?
Yes, so I think these questions are very, very relevant. But first, I would go ahead and just clarify some of the, I think, 3 components that allow us to do programmable money and decentralized or unstoppable applications in the right way. So there are three main components that we focus on with Elrond. The first one is adaptive state sharding. This means that it's there are several versions of sharding. Most of people knew or heard of sharding when Zilliqa came out. Zilliqa is trying to just do network and transaction sharding, but it's not doing state sharding. We attempt to do state sharding and a kind of state sharding which is basically adaptive, which means that the network expands and contracts based on the available number of validators that join and leave the network. This is the first component, and the benefit of sharding is mainly that you can parallelize the transactions. So once you can parallelize transactions, you're in a different world. The second point is that we come with a solution for secure proof of stake. We all know that proof of work is basically unsustainable, and it's fine to talk about it, but if we do not provide a solution, then we cannot move forward. So we did a lot of research and came with a solution that does not go in the direction of delegated proof of stake, but rather solves proof of stake in such a way that is really robust and really secure through random sampling of the consensus group. And the added benefit to this is that through PBFT, we have a very, very fast finality of only 5 seconds until the execution of one transaction is final.
Okay.
And the third component, which goes directly to the dApps, the decentralized apps, is we have a meta VM that we built through K-Framework, which allows us to support 3 smart contract languages from day one. And this is very important because it allows much more developers to come in, to play with the technology, to build on it. And right now, I'm just going to come back to your question. So we know there are 2 basic directions with crypto happening and the blockchain space. And the first one is programmable money or sound money through cryptocurrencies. The second one is goes in the direction of providing a platform for a new version of applications which are decentralized and censorship resistant. And the main benefit of Elrond is that we provide the inherent really valuable properties so that you can have sound money, namely a platform, really fast execution speed, and the capacity to process more than 10,000 transactions per second, while the second point goes directly to the decentralized apps. And because you have such a fast performant platform, you can basically build these apps, support several languages, and then use something that makes sense in terms of applications. Because for the decentralized apps builders, at the end of the day, the question is one of economics. Right. Does it make sense to run something on the blockchain, or is it just a bothersome obstacle compared to the centralized options I got?
Okay, now that was quite a long answer with regard to, and I can understand why you had to include all that technological information, but I do need to pull that back now that you've explained it. So you mentioned things like adaptive sharding, and you talked about parallelizing the system. Now let's discuss this further, because other types of sharding, particularly those transactionally centered ones, still do parallelizing and horizontal scaling solutions for their architectures. So what sets you apart with regard to the adaptive state nature of your sharding when we still see solutions being put forward, whether they be on-chain or off-chain, that still provide focus for just some parts with those clusters of nodes to essentially make them more scalable?
Sure. So I will address this in 3 points. The first one is that off-chain solutions do not really provide a solution. Off-chain solutions are just an excuse until you get a real solution to the main problem. So off-chain solution is basically saying, I will use the centralized counterpart until you fix the problem. And here is centralized solution, and then tell me when you have the solution.
Can you give us an example of that? I've read into Seller, they focus quite a lot on off-chain. Is that an example of what you're saying?
Yeah, so I don't think you need off-chain solution if you can have things off-chain, on-chain, right? The main reason why some people try to offer off-chain solution is because the real problem has not been solved. Real on-chain scalability is considered by some people near to impossible to do. And if you can't show that it's done, which these people have not seen, they basically find the next best alternative, right? I understand their motives, but when you have a real solution that goes and does what Elrond does, then you basically do not need the off-chain solution anymore. So this is
moving to the on-chain as well now with those other types of sharding, what sets you apart from those?
Yeah, so there are three types of sharding: network sharding, transaction sharding, and state sharding. The most difficult problem has been state sharding. We have seen the most interesting implementation of network and transaction sharding in Zilliqa, but this is when we started, even from the beginning, this was like saying, what is the fastest solution I can come up with now? Although in 1 year, this could be obsolete if someone solves the state sharding problem, right? I'm not saying this is easy to solve. The first problem is easy to solve, but it's really, if I want something for the short run, I will go with network and transaction sharding. This is good enough. But if I want something that will really give me a significant competitive advantage, then this is a very difficult problem to solve. And the difference in layman terms, the difference between the network and transaction sharding and the state sharding part translates into a difference in only sharding on transactions, meaning that you can process let's take Zilliqa, you can process up to 2,500 transactions if they are payment transactions. But you cannot scale transactions to the same level if they are smart contracts transactions.
Okay. So essentially, you can scale at the smart contract level.
Both payment and smart contracts should be able to scale significantly to a point where you do not think about scalability anymore. You just focus on building something really interesting. It makes sense from an economical standpoint and performance standpoint, and then it's only up to you to deliver what you want to build.
Right, I appreciate that explanation, because the adaptive state sharding technology that you propose is innovative, it is your own design, and also to add, this is a core feature for your entire business model and in your entire open protocol.
Yeah, I would also add that in addition to the state sharding part, we have an adaptivity feature, which gives Elrond a very, very interesting feature that most other sharding models do not have. It means that we are not only very efficient when the network is small, meaning that we can start with one shard, and as the network grows, when we exceed 800 validators, the single shard can automatically split into 2 shards and then use more efficiency, right? But then if let's say you have 6 shards and one of the shards decreases to the level where you have less than 400 validators, then before this happens, the shard basically merges with the sibling shard back in order to maintain the necessary level of security. So it's not only state sharding, but also adaptive, which I think is a key to maintaining both efficiency and security.
Right, and it also adds to scalability because, again, it can split and build upon that. Now, you mentioned before about these unique, almost hybridized design for your mechanism itself, your consensus. You've added in the finality of the Byzantine fault-tolerant system. You've also got your own stake model as well. So talk us through that. Obviously, you wanted to build this out, but what sets you apart at the consensus level? Is it because you've hybridized this?
So I think, again, the consensus, it's important first to understand what the consensus does. So there are 2 components always. The first one is a Sybil attack prevention mechanism, for this you use either stake or work. And this is why you have proof of stake or proof of work. And the second component is the real consensus part. And this is done very differently in different different architectures. What we wanted to do is take the proof of work out, because we understood that consensus is really important, but we also understood that the proof of work method has hit its significant limitations. And if we can do the same thing with significantly less resources, then that is the desirable outcome. So we took proof of stake and we said, okay, proof of stake is really interesting, but there's something missing there. We have seen some interesting experiments with delegated proof of stake, but these experiments always ended up in some kind of cartel wars, right? And so this is why we said we do not want to go the delegated proof of stake direction. We want a proof of stake which is core to the system, but where you have security and really robust security mechanism to protect the whole consensus part. And this is why we added a random sampling of the consensus group. This means that the consensus group is always unpredictable. You cannot say before it happens who will be in the consensus group, and then unbiasable. So that once you find out, you have only 5 seconds to attack the consensus group, and then immediately after each 5 seconds, the whole consensus group, both validators and proposers, are constantly reshuffled, right? And to even enhance this, at the end of each epoch, you basically have 1/3 of the nodes reshuffled into different charts to make the eventual attack even more unlikely to cause any significant damages.
It's actually a good term that you use, the term shuffle. If we use the analogy of a deck of cards, essentially it's the same thing. It's using that randomizer. You have shufflers essentially at the casinos as well to make sure that the game is fair. And it also means that there's not that readability aspect. There's not that manipulative capacity for people to essentially attack your ecosystem and your tech. So it's really great to know you've built that in for that security. I also apologize to all those viewers for going so deep in that technological discussion, but we did need to make sure that there is that real crux of technology that drives what you're doing as a blockchain engine. Now, let's explore a little bit more about the what in terms of updates. Now, you've had a lot of things going on. Give us a rundown on some of those key developments you've made since you started building this technology up until now that you really want to address.
Sure. So we started Elrond in October 2017. After the initial discussion where it became clear that we really had a breakthrough, we released the first paper in May 2018. Then we released the first prototype validating the hypothesis that we could do cross-shard transaction in July 2018. Then we did what everyone should basically do and open sourced the prototype in November so that people can really play with it and not take our word for it. Run the nodes, see what happens, go through the stuff and understand some of the mechanics of it. And then we did something really interesting. So the prototype is basically not an optimization, but a way of the fastest way of validating your hypothesis. If you're trying to demonstrate something that has not been done before, then a prototype is a really approximate way of doing things. It allows you to go from A to B, but not necessarily in the fastest way. So what we did after we released the prototype was to re-architect the whole thing, write everything from scratch, because we discovered that we could come up with some significant improvements. And we anticipated that we could come with something like 3 to 5x overall performance improvement from prototype to testnet. But then we were extremely excited to discover that the improvements exceeded 30x in terms of from prototype to testnet. So
and that's very interesting as well, Benjamin, because when we last spoke, you were just at that phase of really trying to showcase the beginnings of your demo, of your prototype, and then you still had bugs to debug. You still had issues, quite rightly and understandably.
Exactly.
Since then, this is what I did want to find out, is that you have been progressing, you have been developing and perfecting this prototype so it is usable. So talk us through the state of this prototype now. I noticed that people can apply to utilize the demo. They can access the links. They can also go to GitHub. So how available is the prototype for people right now to explore?
Right. So there are two things. The prototype is already open source, fully open source, so everyone can run a validator node, test the cross-route transactions, and see how things happen. This is just a matter of getting your hands a bit dirty and testing stuff. But what I was referring to in the second part was the testnet. And the testnet is the new layer that we've built that is very, very fast and that we will release publicly in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We are extremely excited about this, and this will happen with a lot of developers just joining and testing. And we will also have a kind of game of stakes, similar to what Cosmos had. Maybe you know, where we try to turn penetration testing and stress testing into a game where people can just come in, see what is happening in the network, try to exploit and behave adversarially in the network. And then if they succeed, then we win, in the sense that we discovered that there are some bugs, we can improve the stuff and we can move forward. Whereas they also win because they discover all the ways they could use the ecosystem for, and also win some benefits, some rewards for their bugs.
It reminds me of those in movies when people are hired to go and break into vaults for banks. It's the same sort of analogy, in that you're literally trying to enhance the tech by getting the smartest of the blockchain brains to come in and stress test it. And I think that's also something that illustrates your desire to be a great technology. That's what I'm hearing from you, because you're very tech-centric. You always have been. Your team is full of engineers, which we'll discuss later. But it's great to know that you are really focused on the tweaks. Try and make sure the tech tweaks are there so people can trust the tech as you evolve. Now, moving across to some of the architecture itself, I want to talk about the analogy of a sandwich, or perhaps some, a building with different levels, in the sense that you are a layered full stack, you are a layered system. So can you talk us through the layering architecture, just briefly, how people could perhaps understand you in that analogy?
Layered architecture, could you maybe clarify?
Well, sure. So essentially, with the whole architecture you've built from end to end, there are literally layers of designs. And you even use the term layers as for different functionalities. So can you tell us just briefly how these layers work?
Right. I think you may refer to the sharding layer, the consensus layer, the
adoption layer, everything.
So I'll just use something much more useful. What we intend to do and to tackle are two things. One, the one thing I think is very similar and can be understood to what happened to the internet when it transitioned from dial-up to broadband. And this is the architecture change that we bring. You basically had a lot more speed and a dramatic decrease in cost. Everything changed with that. And this is part of what we do. This is where the underlying architecture come in. Then the second part, which I think is very, very important, is the user experience. And the user experience has to do with everything you do. Basically, if you build a rocket that does something very interesting, but it costs $1 million just to drive with the rocket, and the rocket then explodes, it's not very efficient, right? And this is what we've seen with some systems in the space. They build something that sounds really interesting, but it's essentially unusable because the costs required from a user or a validator are insane, right? Unsustainable. What we wanted to do with Elrond is construct this kind of very performant architecture, but also make sure that average users can come in, bootstrap a node really easily to a wallet, step by step, just pressing next and putting stuff in, and with less than $1,000 being able to sustain a node and start earning some rewards, start being part of the network. This is a key aspect. The second aspect is we've not only made sure that you can do it with very average computer hardware and very low expenses. So it's very efficient and easy for anyone to start playing with it. But the second point is we want, when you use the stuff, the software should be very simple and intuitively designed so that when you want to send some money, you should not rely only on the 25-character address, stuff like that. Nobody in the real world needs to remember stuff like that. This is just in the blockchain space. As soon as you want to move to real adoption, you need to forget all that and use something which is relevant to the user, like an @email address. How about you connect the address in the backend to the @email address and then allow everyone to send money around based on an email address? How would this provide usability and the different experience to the user? So
is that what you're proposing? Because obviously in saying that, surely you have a solution that is moving beyond that key system, as you talked about, that's easily lost, it's complex, it's difficult for people to understand. So
yes.
When you talk about interfaces, usability, ease of use, have you got solutions already preset now to allow for people to adopt your technology more seamlessly?
Yes. So I think one of the key problems that we solve in addition to the technology part is something that is very, very little discussed in the blockchain space. And this is distribution and real adoption. And I think Peter Thiel referred to this very, very poignantly when he said that most of the startups that die do not die because of technical problems or product problems. They mainly die because of distribution problems. So taking this very seriously, we actually built a new product, which I will not discuss too much about here because this is, we want this to launch and then people will discover it.
Okay.
But we have built something especially for this, just going directly to the user and providing a new experience. So I'll only say this at this point about this, but we are thinking very hard and have put a lot of time in thinking about this. And I'll just move forward to the business and adoption side.
Great,
so,
yeah.
I think this is, again, very important to understand where the business is coming. And we've had several discussions with large enterprise technology businesses that are trying to see what the blockchain architecture can do. Because at the end of the day, the blockchain architecture is just a tool. And for the tool to make sense, you need to understand what these people are trying to use it for. And you need to understand especially what they are looking for that needs to work. And the key things we are optimizing for and that we have discovered are throughput. You basically need a lot of transactions. And if you cannot provide something similar to what the centralized counterparts can provide, then you're still far off. This is why we came with a solution that goes beyond 10,000 transactions per second, such that you really have something comparable to the centralized part of the counterpart.
Okay. Right.
One. The second point is you need low latency. This means that if you can process a transaction in 10 minutes, such as the Bitcoin network does, this is not good enough, right? If you can process it in 1 minute, it's still not good enough. What you need is near instant transactions. And this is what we come up with in Elrond, where we have 5 seconds transaction finality.
Right. Got it.
And the third and perhaps most important thing is the economics part. If it does not make sense from an economic standpoint, meaning that for each transaction you pay a high cost, then nobody will use it at the end of the day. But if you have, this is the beauty of it, if you have a very high throughput capacity and a lot of validators, then you can afford to pay the validators some money and still have low transactions fees overall. because you have a very, very large number of transactions overall.
Okay, so in a nutshell, more throughput, lower latency, and fundamentally there's the economic aspect as well. I think that last point is probably the most important in the sense that we hear the narrative of the other two all the time, nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
But talk us through this in a more pragmatic sense. Let's assume I'm the business that wants to interact in the traditional sector and work with you. I call you up. How do you show that I can save money as an enterprise, since we're discussing that, by utilizing Elrond?
Sure. So I'll just go ahead and give you the example of our last discussion we had with an interesting enterprise client where the discussion went something like this. So what you're doing is extremely interesting. We have implemented a pilot projects for machine-to-machine transactions on Ethereum, but this is obviously not working from a latency standpoint and not working from a transaction cost.
So not scaling.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can provide something that is 100 times faster and cheaper, then we are basically organizing a hackathon tomorrow to test what you have in place. Okay. And this is the kind of discussion we had several times. This is why the whole focus for us was to just have the first version of the testnet, just be able to start organizing this type of hackathons and having this discussion with the companies, because companies have seen exactly what we've been discussing before. You've heard this already a lot of times, but it's a different story when you can test this and we can go and have a discussion, and it's not just a discussion, but I take my notebook out, launch the stuff, demonstrate it, and then there's a different discussion.
Now, Benjamin, you are the CEO, so you've actually done this. You've done this privately. You've gone and seen the reactions from enterprise parties in the traditional sector, experiencing your technology, trying to interact with it and use it for their context and for their needs. Talk us through a little bit more. I'm going to dig deeper. Tell us the kinds of size of these businesses. Tell us their reactions. Tell us what their feedback. Are they saying, yes, we can do this? Is there a pipeline of these kinds of businesses right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have basically two directions we're trying to go to. And one is getting this type of pipeline where once we have a demo, once we can do a demo to the company is basically hooked. They want to see more. And we have a batch of companies that are very, very curious, very interesting. And at this point, there is no real tech company that is not exploring this type of technology, right? So it's not like we're talking something new with them. What we are surprised to discover is that they have several directions, several verticals where they want to integrate blockchain in, like machine-to-machine transactions is something that will very soon be used within self-driving cars, right? Where the car stops at the gas station, you have an automatic way of charging the car or fueling the car, and then the car can pay from the inside to the fuel station. Mm-hmm. And this is something they would need not only for the car, but for any kind of Internet of Things devices. Right. Which you have in your house and so forth. And the key point is that for such an architecture to work, scalability is the key, right? Right. Without scalability, you cannot even start a discussion. Sure. So as soon as they hear of something like this, they want not just to discuss the integration into machine-to-machine transactions, let's say, but rather have a hackathon to discover how they could use it on 5 verticals they have. And this is something very, very exciting. So exciting, in fact, that everything we do right now is just focus on finishing the testnet so we can do the hackathon, so we can continue the discussions and move forward from there.
Right. So clearly you're going to have more hackathons emerge, and we're going to see this arguably in Europe and beyond. Can you tell us a bit more about the revenue as well? So let's say we fast track and we assume that these hackathons start to emerge and that businesses are going to be impressed and utilize your tech. Now, how do you turn that into revenue on top of the open source protocol so that you can sustain your team, you can build your team so that you can grow your business?
Sure. I think this is a very good question. And what I would say is that this is very familiar if you read a bit of how the internet came along and how the people were trying to make sense of what was happening with the internet. Because at first there was a lot of excitement, there was a lot of euphoria, and there were some companies that really had users. But basically nobody knew how they could make money out of those users until somebody figured that out. And this is the key. At that point, if you look at the newspapers, I was just reading a book about this, and then it was going through the details, especially to understand the mindset and how these people solved these problems. It was very funny to see how some people even discounted the value of the internet, saying that the internet was a fad, it will probably go away in a few years and so forth. And there were a lot of interesting startups that have died because they did not find a way to move forward. But for each startup that has died or was mocked, we have $1 billion sector right now. So the key lessons were there just to point out that it is indeed difficult to make sense at first, how you bring this technology to the market, how you make money of it. But the key point is that if you find a way to have users, you're already more advanced than most people in the space.
Well, let's pull it back though to Elron. I'm just going to jump in there for a minute, because you're saying the imperative is to be able to make revenue. So how are you going to do that with your model so that you can, again, stay around, you can stick around for the long term?
Sure. So we have two directions. One of the direction I will not go too much into, because at this point it has to do with the new product I was mentioning, where this is direct user facing, and it brings some benefits to the user, basically allowing them to transfer value in any way, really simple, and then giving them access to a few features they don't have. But I will focus on the main thing that has to do with our discussion. So we have an economic model, for the token that makes clear that you cannot use anything of our platform without this inherent token.
And that's a utility token, to be clear.
Pardon me?
And that's a utility token, just so that we're clear on that. Right.
Exactly. And you will be able to use all the features I was mentioning before with this token. Now, the second point to this token is that we will have a staking mechanism through which people will basically provide security of the network and the possibility for the network to process transactions, and they will be rewarded in order to provide this type of security and service work in the network. This is one thing. The second thing is that we are proposing a new economic model which will come out in a paper during the next probably 2 weeks, where we will go much more into detail how we intend to make this model more sustainable. So whereby we want to fuel part of the transaction costs, part of the rewards that will be paid in the network will go to the people that provide the service, and part to the rewards will go to a community fund trying to constantly bootstrap new application, new use cases and interesting stuff, and part of this will go to the team developing the whole architecture in order to make this sustainable. The idea being that you want to transition from a really inception stage where you just bootstrap everything to a process that would work for the long term, would bring recurring revenue based on the adoption the network has. So let's say your network reaches a certain point of adoption and you process a certain number of transactions, you have a threshold. Well, at that stage, you make something like 2 to 5 millions a year, let's say, and we have calculated the number of transactions. Then if you 100x that number, you start making 100x revenue. This allows you to speed up, grow a lot faster, and also build a much more sustainable ecosystem.
Now that paper, Benjamin, is going to be very important to read. So obviously when it comes out, I'm going to tackle that quickly and read through it. That would be the crux of the viability aspect. That really proves the integrity of your whole system, and that you can correlate the token with your ecosystem potential, so that there isn't just simply a fundraising coin, but something of true, authentic utility. We'll need to see that paper. But what is good to hear is that you're taking this aspect of crypto economics very seriously, because quite simply and frankly, most blockchains are not doing that, and very few are really going into detail to prove that they have real utility, real velocity, and real correlations of value. So I think that the thing really to explore, we've done a lot of focus on the technology. Just to redress some things, or just to rehash, we looked at the stress testing, that's got a tick. We've talked about the GitHub access, that's fine. Interface is working, operational, there's demos there. Speed, 10,000 transactions per second possible. But what about aspects like, for example, cross-blockchain? Now, how does that work? Interoperability, that's one big asset that many of the sharding techs do not have.
Sure. I think this is a lot overrated. So there is a lot of discussion between cross-chain communication, and I think this is useful, but very overrated. So we already see two interesting directions coming in the space with Cosmos and Polkadot, and they are proposing something that seems to make sense. One seems a bit more advanced than the other, but the idea is that if you have adoption, it's very easy to make communication with other blockchains possible.
Okay.
The key problem is not that you cannot communicate from one blockchain to another. The key problem is, how do you use this type of technology? First, make the technology fast enough so you can use it in real world settings. And then, make sure that within the blockchain ecosystem, you can communicate with several blockchains. In fact, I would say that even within this aspect, we all are already discussing, and we have a partnership with Nash. Nash is trying to do this kind of cross-chain communication even at the transaction level, so that people can have in their DEX, in the DEX that Nash builds, transactions between Bitcoin and Nash, between Ethereum and Bitcoin, something that you do not have on decentralized exchanges right now.
So transactional interoperability, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we take a few steps there. The first one is we already have a partnership with Nash to start experimenting and exploring, integrating Elrond into what Nash builds currently, as soon as we have the technology ready. This is one. The second point, we are already researching and are very up to date with the current solutions, but we see this as secondary to Elrond. So as soon as we have the underlying performance and security working at optimal levels, we will focus on interoperability.
Okay,
and
I like how you're doing these in sequence as well, because obviously you want to make sure you fulfill the requirements of each phase of your development. Now, you mentioned Nash. You've always had that connection. It's clear that you are also explaining that there's a clear purpose. You didn't just do it because you knew the boys. You didn't just do it because you knew Fabian and you knew Ethan. But you're doing it for real functional reasons, that you actually want to build out your ecosystem and have technological partners that can enhance your technology and your potential. Is that fair to say that everything you do is about building and enhancing Elrond?
Sure. So what we have done with the advisors, because I think you were referring to this earlier, is that with each person that has come in, we have tried not to pick the one that only looks good on paper,
Yeah.
but people with which we can have a discussion on a relevant topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to have someone who builds DEXs so that we can have some kind of discussion with them to receive relevant feedback. We want someone with real in-depth business acumen and startup knowledge to constantly receive feedback. We want someone with good economics background to receive feedback on that. And we tried with each really big or large problem we have to have someone that has some edge or advantage on this as a kind of peer review, because mostly it's us doing the work, but it's always good to just get some peer review once you have the work done to make sure, okay, well, you're on the right track, or you might change this a bit or position it a bit different. But yeah, this is the main approach we're focusing on.
Right. Now, it gave you good cred as well, I have to say, because the boys are from the COZ as well, the City of Zion. They have immense technological understanding and knowledge and backgrounds. They come from a huge team of them as well, much like you're building with your engineers in Elrond. But I want to talk beyond that and with the partnerships we don't know about as well, whether they be blockchain centered or more institutional and enterprise centered. Are you going to expand these kinds of partnerships as well, so that beyond just the advisory in this respect into true collaborative, reciprocal and beneficially so partnerships that can, again, really help you to build out?
Yeah, we are doing this already. What we've been trying to do, though, was, again, differentiate ourselves not by coming with the same partnerships that everyone else is coming, like they list partnerships with AWS or Amazon, which is not at all a partnership because they're using AWS for their machines. So what we've been focusing on is 3 directions. One, the payment part. So we already have a partnership with the largest payment processor here in Romania, which will allow Elrond users to basically use the token in more than 6,000 stores immediately after the token exists from day one. One of the directions. The second direction is with respect to DEXs. With Nash, we've had a constant discussion from the beginning what we could do and how we could process things in order to, when the technology is ready, integrate it with what they build in Nash, so that our network is also part of the networks that will be able to transfer transactions directly. And then the third part is referring to what I have been mentioning before, where we try to leverage the architecture we have built for smart grid, Internet of Things, and other type of industry technology leaders that want to use it for different purposes. And here we have a partnership with one of the largest research facilities in Romania that is actively building a solution, a model for a solution for a smart grid that works on blockchain. And the problem there was that they basically had a model on Ethereum, which is, again, uneconomical and really unperformant. So it was a very, very good fit. So we're advancing with this very good. Yeah.
Very interesting that you talk about Romania, where you're based now. Now, clearly you're essentially stress testing the productivity in the real use case sector, in the real scenarios, I mean. You're using real verticals that apply to, I would imagine, different areas of business. So talk us through your plan with regard to going global as well, because everything hinges on the outcomes of these enterprises using you in Romania. So how's that going? Is that already existent now? Is it in operation? And what's the plan beyond this?
Sure. So I did not want to divulge some of the secrets before. I would only say about the companies I mentioned before in the Internet of Things business and infrastructure technology business. They are from Germany. All the development that has been going right now has been going with companies outside that are either from the US or most of them from Europe, Germany, Switzerland. But the whole point of what we build with Elrond is to make it global. And with the product that we will be launching, as I have mentioned before,
Right.
it will become global.
Right. There's a lot you're not telling me, Benjamin. So clearly you do know a lot more about how you are about to launch in different countries. I like the names of the countries, I have to say, because many of them represent credibility in the blockchain. There's quite simply a lot of blockchain bullshit in the space. And I'm not going to say different regions of the world, but I certainly will say that there are regions that I trust quite a lot. And some of them are, in fact, areas where you are, and that is in Europe. There's a lot of good tech and a good establishments there to support and uphold the integrity of what's coming to essentially move into and enhance current businesses. It's not just simply about trying to make everything decentralized. It's trying to allow this technology to integrate into the existing, business, into the economies that exist around the world as well. So it's good to hear those developments. Now, you have new advisors. I want to talk to you about Grigor as well. He's a new addition. Why is he there, and why arguably can he enhance your business model?
Yes, I think the Grigore and us, we've been in discussion for a lot of time now. It's interesting if you look at Grigore's background, he has been at NASA and has invented K-Framework, which is a formal verification language framework that has been used at NASA to make sure that once you fly in space, you do not have many bugs in the code. Because if you do, it's quite clear what happens for the rocket, right? And the formal verification part makes sure that once you want to put something into code, you have an additional mathematical layer that pushes you to clarify a lot better everything that you want to put into code. And what Grigore has discovered during the last period of time is that formal verification is something that is much needed in the blockchain space because of large transactions that some projects like Ethereum have made that have lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And because of that, there has been a lot of interest in the space to add formal verification to smart contracts, especially. So since one of the things we're developing is a new VM that Elrond will have, that will support several languages like Ethereum Solidity, Yele, and then WASP.
Okay.
We've been working with Grigore Roșu in a discussion because we use K-Framework. We have built a backend for K-Framework from scratch and are working with him in order to develop this in the most optimal manner possible.
It's good to hear that Grigore, it's hard to say his name, is involved because clearly he has a major technological knowledge. He has the ability to really integrate something that is going to enhance your security. That also couples well with the growth of your team. I've noticed that that's evolving. Your team's bigger than when I remember when we last spoke. So talk us through the nature of your team. What's the core asset that they bring holistically? And how are you affording to build this team out?
Yeah, so I think this is a very interesting question since we've been through this down
the bear market, right?
We have chosen the people with which we work very carefully, and I think this is starting to show in real results. And the people are very, very smart, focused, and determined. You can see them on the page, but the main thing is that I think all this progress has come and has been self-funded up until this point. And we are very proud of this because in contrast to other projects which may have lost a lot of money for the investors and so forth, we are starting from this very low point with a lot of progress. And from a low point, you have a significant upside where you can go through. And the team is, I would add something about the team. So people think that a much larger team, beyond a certain point, means that you will progress a lot faster, but this is quite the contrary. Whenever you build something very difficult, beyond the 10, 15 people you initially have, everything is an overhead in communication and complexity. You need to manage a lot more, need to synchronize a lot more, and a lot more parties add a lot more difficulties or problems if they are not very, very smart and equipped.
Right.
And
especially, sorry to interrupt, but especially when you haven't done your main pre-sales. I mean, as you said, you've bootstrapped this with your core members right from the outset with very little funding. So to be able to go and scale beyond this is really, really not an easy task to do, and nor should it be something of an objective. Right now, you're talking about quality over quantity. So that's clear. I've read all through the general blurbs of each of your members, and it's quite substantial when it comes to cred. Again, very, very strong technical team, very strong engineering team. But what I want to know more about is the plan, because it is okay to scale in terms of your team if you have the funding, if you bring more quality in. You know, Google proved that. So what's the plan forward with regard to developing the team, with regard to funding? Talk us through that.
Sure. So we intend to expand the team significantly, but want to make sure that we keep or raise the quality so that each member that comes in the team adds something significant to the team. We've had some new members. They have been very well received, and this is the way we want to do things. This is often very difficult to do, so the scaling part is a very difficult problem for startups, but not unsolvable, right? There are a lot of things from which we can work. The one thing we are waiting for right now, or going through, is this funding round, and we have some clear targets on which we focus in order to expand the team. So we have this core part of Elrond, which we want to expand and add additional engineering power. But the core people, head of technology, head of engineering, head of research, and all the other members are in a position where I'm really surprised how well they can work together. And this is the key part, the key thing, I think, which is very valuable to Elrond for maintaining the speed with which we can execute and build. And so we want to add people to this core team. And then we have the new product, which I have not discussed too much about. We have a new team on that as well, and try to add more people on that. In addition to all this, there are a lot of aspects that we will cover much more focused during the next period, immediately as we have the testnet run, like marketing, a lot more global communication, trying to deliver this message to the companies, to the users, and getting people involved. Because at the end of the day, it's not enough to have the technology. You want to have it distributed and put it in the hand of the right people.
Right, and you also want it to be known. You want the brand to be out there. People need to know the brand, for people to use it. Exactly. Let's pull it back though, Benjamin. Let's pull it back to this round. You know, you very quickly skimmed over. We want to talk about how much money you're planning on raising. What's involved in this sale? How transparent can you be, or are you being right now? Or are you not disclosing much about this?
So I am not allowed for legal reason to disclose all the details, because this is a private round, but I can say two things. One, we are going, we understand what we need and that we can move really fast. This is our advantage. This is why we're going for a very modest cap compared to other projects. We think this is very healthy, and this puts focus on execution. And this is what.
When you say modest, are we talking like under 10 mil, that kind of thing?
No, under 5 mil. Under 5 mil. So
okay,
we're raising.
Quite modest.
And this is not for this round. This is the whole cap is under 5 mil. For this round, we're raising 1.5 mil.
Got it. So in that context, can you just talk briefly about these kinds of numbers when we see 100 million raised, even $1 billion raised? You know, just comment on that and can contrast what you're suggesting is your plan with a very minimal, very frugal approach. Why the heck are they doing that?
I think these are two problems. So the main thing for us is it's clear to us what the upside is, right? If our nearest competitor, let's say, is Zilliqa, and I have a lot of respect for the team at Zilliqa.
Or let's say Algorand, huge raise.
Yeah. If these are our nearest competitors and they're raising at $1 billion valuation right now, then I won't comment too much on the what they do, but I will say that for me, if I were to invest in these projects, I would not do it. I know how large the upside is, and that there's not much there.
And just to clarify as well, this is not financial advice in any way from either myself or Benjamin, but the point we're making, or he is making in this instance, is that essentially it's about the valuation, really understanding the stark differences between some of the blockchains now, from smaller valuations and lower caps, to those that are really ambitious with their valuation. Sorry to interrupt, please go on.
Yeah, so I think the ambitious would be the wrong word. More ambitious would be when you think you can execute, you can raise a bit lower, but you think and you can see that the upside is probably better, or at least the same for Elrond that it is for Algorand. And then the only question for the investor is, do I want to invest, if the possibilities or probabilities are very interesting, then do I want to invest at a $1 billion valuation or a 10 million with a cap of 5 or something?
You raise a really good point there. And also, when you're talking about investment, you're talking about investment in support of a utility in that pre-utility phase, to make sure that you're literally putting your money in the belief this will become operational in its, according to its roadmap, according to its white paper. So it's interesting you raise the point that you are a low cap, you are specifically designed to have low valuation so that you can get in, use the small amount of money you need to get building. So have you set that in your design enough? Do you have enough in your runway, in your plan? How long would this last you, according to your assessment and your economics?
Yes. So we are focusing to have the runway for the next 2 years. The idea is that we will launch the mainnet this year, and we'll have significant runway to expand all operations. If this works out, then we should be able to transition to the model I was alluding to before, and make this much more sustainable. What I would say is that at the end of the day, people need to understand the real potential of the technology. So if this type of technology penetrates a market and can dominate, can capture a niche market and then grow from there, then the initial valuations or can be something so trivial that you will ask only, how can I not have seen this happening, right? This is always what's happening in hindsight after something that does not look very clear to you at one moment. The moment that it becomes so obvious, you sort of think, how can I have missed this?
Right. Okay. So now getting back to the raise itself, is it completed? Given such a small amount of money, surely all of the institutional and crypto investors, the VCs I'm talking about, are calling you right now. I would imagine, especially since we're moving away from the bottom of that bear potentially. Have you completed the raise, or are you about to seal all these deals?
So we are very, very oversubscribed. Since we have a very modest raise, we can also do one thing that most projects cannot, and this is choose some trustworthy or interesting, curious people that really want to help, believe in the technology, and if they come in, they come in because they can add something in addition to the money part, right?
So you're guaranteeing that they are value add. They're truly reciprocally value adding, not just giving you the bucks to get 10x back.
Exactly. So we've taken this measure for everything we've done, that we think things through, put them in perspective, align the incentives. And once the people understand the potential, we can also have a discussion to select the interesting people. So we are now in the phase where we are oversubscribed, have tremendous ask, but we are in this process where we try to filter people, try to have a discussion with the reasonable people that are aligned for the long run and want to see Elrond succeed, not only 3 months from now, but really for the next few years. And we are focusing on making this happen.
Right.
I think the response is very, very exciting.
Sure. And Benjamin, when we last spoke, you were considering at that point doing your raise. You were doing that round. It's good to hear that you took the time, especially given the bear, because it allowed your technology to build to such a point where you really can now attract that oversubscription, and you have. So now it's a much like, having a job offer, but instead of having just a few interviews, you're really inundated with a whole lot, and you can select the best of the applicants. So it's good to hear that the tech and that the reciprocal benefit for usership is paramount to everything. And you're not just simply adopting what we've seen in the past, which is the big brands of VCs in the crypto space who are going to collude, or they're going to align to essentially pump you. You don't seem to be about that. You seem to be about something else, which is about the integrity of the tech. Now, you mentioned mainnet. Give us some clarity on that. You're going to build this in phases with the test nets so that you properly build towards the mainnet, but it is coming fast. So give us the clear dates and what it will mean in relation to where,
Sure. So the main focus right now, as I have mentioned before, is the testnet. This is the point where we are focusing to ship the technology. And with the testnet launch, it's important to not just ship the technology, but start this kind of game of stakes part, where we have real developers from around the world start playing this. Start tinkering with the technology, start discovering its potential, limitations, improving it throughout the process. This is the first step. The second step will add additional layers of complexity. With each new release, we intend to have a new release with each 3-4 weeks during the testnet phase, where we add another layer of complexity in order to have the full architecture ready and then move with that. The second point is that we will have all these hackathons where we try to engage with the companies, with startups, and so forth. The third point is we have a university program where we try to find a bunch of friends at different universities around the world to not only have the companies in, but also have startups trying to come up with some interesting ideas and put them on something that makes sense from an economics and performance standpoint. And then as we reach the testnet, the mainnet should happen at this point. It seems on track to happen at the end of Q2. But I would add that with the development of this type of very complex architecture, it's very hard to estimate that this will be exactly true. The important point for us is to reach the testnet, and then it becomes a lot more clearer. Then we can say, okay, maybe it happens a bit faster, maybe it takes another month, but the point is to prove that we are out there, to have the adoption of the community. And then when we launch the mainnet, it should not be like what we see currently with other architecture, that the mainnet launch is basically nothing happening. It's just a increase in interest for all we've seen. So we want to grow the momentum. And with the release of the mainnet, you should have a significant community being able to run nodes, building dApps, and using the architecture in infrastructure scenarios.
Got it. And that will also couple with the efforts you're making in the enterprise and private sector. So you'll have not just those individual devs who are working in teams around the world, but you'll also have arguably dev teams inside businesses also doing the same thing privately. Because it is important to mention, you do have a private enterprise blockchain arm and design in what you're doing.
We have a discussion about a private blockchain, but at this point, since the last discussion, We've
Okay.
changed a few things, and it makes much more sense to focus on the public version and make everything work with respect to the public version. We may, at some point, just license some private versions. Since
Okay.
it's very performance-based, it might make sense, and this would add additional revenue, but it's not the main focus. We know the focus is the most expensive or the most difficult part in a startup. If you have too many things that you're trying to do, you basically lose at a lot of them.
Right.
You want to just ship, and then you'll see results. And I'll just add that with the mainnet, this is just the first step. After the mainnet, we have a plan of expansion into different apps and dApps directions, verticals. We obviously are thinking how we could either build a DEX on top of Elrond, because this is something that makes sense even now, but this is something that will become much clearer when we launch the mainnet.
Right. And it's good to hear you have a vision for tech beyond the mainnet. Also, it's important to explore or make the point that you do have your SDK tools set. You also have the API. So for devs, they're already available and they'll no doubt develop. So we won't talk about them now, but if you'd like to know more, you can obviously go and see all the links, look into Medium, look into the website of Elrond. But I want to talk to you now about one that everyone wants to know about, and that's exchanges. Now, there's a big buzz, right, controversial as it is, about IEOs. You won't want to talk about it, and I do. Hope that's okay. What is the plan for your IEO, if indeed you're going to do one? And what's beyond that? This is the most important part, is will there be other important listings from top tier exchanges? And is there a marketing plan to follow up so that you can sustain beyond whatever it is you're planning as you emerge?
Sure. So first, we are in discussion with several exchanges, exploring all the other options, all the options there are. We are very, however, very careful to choose something that makes sense, one, from a legal standpoint, that aligns with what we're trying to build on the long run, and then that takes into consideration the different pros and cons for an ICO or an IEO. That being said, I'll just say a few things about the IEO. The benefits of the initial exchange offering are that it's on the one hand very efficient from a raising standpoint, very efficient from an awareness standpoint. It drives awareness within the community and so forth. And you can bootstrap everything through one single portal. This is one thing. The second thing is that it's very good from a distribution standpoint, meaning that instead of having just a few whales just eating your whole ICO, through this you can put some caps and move in a different direction. What I would say is the con of this, the contra argument,
sure,
is that there are many people that are left out. One. The second point is we have not seen initial exchange offerings done right, meaning that after the initial stage, the projects are basically left to their own devices, not necessarily followed by something interesting where the investors are receive further communication, really clear ideas of what will happen, what they need to do.
And I also need to jump in because I didn't ask this before, and it is important. We've also seen a propensity in some instances, not all IEOs, where there's been evidence of dumping from the seed investor, or from maybe not the seed, but certainly the pre-sale investor. And that's because there's been access to some of those tokens that in an unlocked sense. Now, I didn't ask this before. With the investors that you're looking at now, are you also going to ensure that they're locked up, that they can't go and simply dump when it hits the IEO? Or it hits the list, the exchange, depending on what you decide to do?
Yes. So this is what I meant with aligning interests. So we can not only talk about aligning interests without having strict lockups, right? If you want to build something for the long run and the investors say that they believe in the technology, they should be able to delay immediate gratification
Right.
if they really believe it. If they do not believe it, then it's fair enough. They have a lot of options in the market right now. That being said, we also understand that this is a win-win situation. So the investors that come in right now for Elrond, when we deliver, so once the technology is out, they will have a significant reward. And this is why they also appreciate the long-term release schedules and lockups, not only for the investors, but also for the team. We are not here for tomorrow. This is a 10-year and hopefully more long game. This is what we're building.
So that harps back to the IEO then. In that instance, if you're going to preclude those parties from dumping, which essentially through the lockup you'll do, even more reason for distribution in this sense, I would suggest, because that means that more people could hopefully access it. But the problem is the expediency. Sometimes it happens in a second or in 7 seconds, which again is the problem we see now. So are you going to do anything to make sure that not only distributions are focused, but fair access for those who want to take part in the Elrond ecosystem?
Yeah, so I would say 2 things. First, we are open, as I have mentioned before, to both initial exchange offerings and ICOs, but we also see the limitations of those. So what we will do is have discussion with exchanges, different exchanges, or with different platforms to see if there is a better option, if we can customize different things, if we can come up with our own mechanism. If this can be done, yes, this is interesting. If it cannot be done, then we will probably see what the best option is as soon as we are done with the first phase right now, and then focus on.
It's good to hear, Benjamin, that you're still looking at and exploring these options to suit the needs of the people, because the retail investors really matter in this space. Now, let's talk about dates. Obviously, things are moving fast. I would imagine that you're going to be an ERC. Is it correct in saying you're an ERC20 now and you will be at the point of listing?
Not sure if at the point of listing. So we will have an ERC20 token right now. Yes, I think if the listing happens, if we do an IEO, let's say, then yes, it will have to be an ERC20 because otherwise you cannot distribute the tokens.
Exactly.
But then, so ERC20 token, and then this will be swapped to the mainnet token.
Got it. Now, what are you thinking in terms of dates? I know you can't tell us specifically, but just generally, given your mainnet's Q2, are you thinking, it sounds like Q2?
Sure. So what we are thinking right now is that we are very close to closing everything and just trying to select and have a reasonable discussion with the people we want in this first round. And I would say that we expect the next round to be in the next 1 or 2 months. Either so it's in Q2 in any case, right? But 1 or 2 months is hopefully the expected date, and then immediately after that, probably the mainnet.
Right. Now, a lot of people don't know the inner workings of Elrond right now. They've heard of you, arguably, especially if they're crypto savvy. What are you going to do to make sure more people know, whether it be in the mainstream domain with mainstream media or in the crypto space, which is really important to drive interest initially? What's the strategy for PR pre-listing and post-listing? And can we also throw in the open discussion about market making in there as well?
Sure. So we have an architecture of communication. This is how we call it, where we have 3 layers of things we're focusing on. There's the community. This is the core and first part we're focusing on. This has grown tremendously during the last period. We've worked and are working with a platform that is providing social mining, such that people from all over the place can join, can leverage what they have, either it's marketing or community awareness or coding skills. They can register with their social media accounts or GitHub accounts, and then can earn points. And then these points will be transformed into Elrond. This means
Oh, wow,
that
that's cool.
at the end of the day, everyone can get some rewards, can start from zero and basically earn something without putting money in. This is one thing. And
Okay,
I
so
think
I want to ask you in that sense, how are you going to vet the quality of that so it's not crypto crap, so that it's not just simply something people are doing to get tokens, but it fosters the integrity of your system for that point system?
Exactly. So not everyone who joins this receives something. It's just that some of the people who join contribute something really valuable. And those who contribute something really valuable are awarded points. And then some of those points are converted to Elrond. This means that you have several filtering mechanisms in order to make sure that the people who are really interested and can really add some value, those are the people who get rewarded, and those are the people who we keep in for the long run. And
Very
keep
cool. That
engagement.
seems like a very fair model.
Yes, then there is this second layer where we are in discussion with several people from around the crypto space, either from projects or from different industries, and are trying to further a communication, have some kind of interviews like the one we do with you, and have the communication out, just let the message out so that people understand where we're coming from, what we're doing, and why they should care.
Right.
This is what we're doing within the crypto space. And then we have a third layer where we have a PR campaign that is prepared and that will leverage the main outlets, either technical or mainstream outlets, just to bring the information out about Elrond, what's happening.
It's awesome to hear you have all those different strategies, you know, because obviously you need to have that media. But how do you avoid what I've termed as effluencers, you know, who are essentially influencers, some of them, who really don't understand anything about what they're talking about, but they're just simply trying to produce content to make that quick buck, to make that quick shill, to get you to pay them when they don't really necessarily understand what they're talking about. How do you make sure that you don't engage with those kinds of people who arguably are just trying to pump your coin, and even in some instances align with others who are doing the same?
Sure. So I think there are many well-intentioned people and a lot of ill-intentioned people. What we are trying to do is just find out, to the best of our abilities, who are the people who can provide value, can provide a useful conversation, and can help us enhance the communication we want to do with the community, with the people we want to target, and so forth. And to the best of our abilities, we try to just go through recommendations where friends of friends and people we've known for a long time just give us some information, and we go test this out, watch it, filter it, and then hopefully when we discover interesting people, we make sure we connect and have an interesting conversation.
Got it. And I like that you're also rewarding with the token, because that means that the people participating are also incentivized to support your utility. It's not about trying to get USD or trying to get more ETH and BTC. It's actually about supporting you. Now, to finish off, it's been a really long interview, and I do apologize if you have survived this Elrond interview, and it's been really interesting for me. Now, socials, if we want to know more about Elrond, especially as you move towards listing, as you move towards mainnet, people need to access information. So how can they do it? Where can they do it? What kind of platforms can they access?
Sure. I think the most direct communication channel is the Telegram channel, where you can find Elrond. You can go at elrond.com and you can find all the social channels out there, but make sure to first subscribe to Twitter. We have the Telegram channel, and then we have this new community channel, which is community.elrond.com, where you can just subscribe, register, and then start earning some points, making some contribution, and giving us feedback, because we're quite open. We have some definite things where to which we want to stick, but we're also very open. So if we see constructive feedback, we're eager to take it, incorporate it, and then move further as fast as possible.
Got it. Well, Benjamin Mincu, you are the CEO of Elrond. Thank you very much for your time this evening. You've covered almost every single facet of what is shaping up to be a real diamond in this blockchain. I'd also like to clarify that this was an unpaid interview. I am not invested in Elrond at this point, but I certainly will be looking at not only the point system potentially in the future, but looking at supporting the utility in some point and in some way. But you know, for full transparency, it's been really educational for me. I've learned a lot about what you've done since we last spoke, and I hope you have too, as the listeners and viewers, because it's all about trying to allow you the best information, the best access. And today I want to thank you, Benjamin, for giving us exactly that. Wish you all the very best as you continue your test nets until you really get to that proof and of moving into those sectors we talked about, of business, of developers, and of utilizing this for the long term. That's what you're really about. And I wish you all the very best with your team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. It was great to be here. Thanks.
You're welcome, mate. Cheers.